New beginnings. No matter what our failures as a community of believers, we should determine to move forward once we've dealt with our sin issues. Here's Gene.
So in Numbers chapter 26, we read, "These were the ones registered by Moses and Eleazar the priest when they registered the Israelites on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. But among them there was not one of those who had been registered by Moses and Aaron the priest when they registered the Israelites in the wilderness of Sinai. For the Lord had said to them that they would all die in the wilderness, and none of them was left except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun." And so God is giving them a new beginning. And that's really the story of God's grace, new beginnings. And that's what we read in 2 Corinthians, where Paul is dealing with restoration of the person who was disciplined by the church. And this is what he wrote in 2 Corinthians. "The punishment by the majority is sufficient for such a person. So now you should forgive, comfort him instead. Otherwise, this one may be overwhelmed by excessive grief." See, the discipline is at work in his life. And so Paul says, "Therefore, I urge you, confirm your love to him." And the love was what brought the discipline in the first place. That's tough love. That's the difficult part of love, is to deal with sin. And so we have here a principle from 2 Corinthians, and that deals with spiritual restoration. When we confront sin in the life of a fellow Christian, our primary goal should always be repentance and restoration. And I remember going back to that day I was sitting in that kitchen and looking across that table and saying, "I'm here because I love you." And I was very honest, as I've been in cases like that. I've said I would rather be 1,000 miles away than sitting here looking at you. Emotionally. Emotionally, I don't want to be here. But I'm here because I love you. And it's amazing when people know you love them, how the message comes through. Not always. Not always. In fact, even the other illustration I used of the man I confronted who was involved with the woman who was a deacon in another church, I did the same thing with him, but it didn't work in terms of his changing. But I do remember this. He said, "Jane, I appreciate your concern, but thanks and no thanks." And he said, "I won't create any problems." And he walked out that door and he walked away from our church. But he knew I loved him. Now I hope that God eventually brought him to repentance. I don't really know the end of the story. But love is the basis of all discipline. And in this case, it's speaking the truth, always, in love. And so the question that I want to leave us with here is, why do some Christians have difficult time forgiving their fellow Christians even when those who have sinned have demonstrated repentance and have asked for forgiveness? And it's a very important thing because Jesus talked about this. In Matthew, we have a principle which reads, "To maintain intimate fellowship with God and one another, we must forgive those who sin against us." It's not just confrontation, but it's forgiveness on our part. And the fact is, we must forgive in order to have fellowship. Why do we have difficulty sometimes forgiving people? Well, I made a few notes on that, which I think are biblical. Number one, we forget how much God has forgiven us. The Bible talks about that. Forgive as God has forgiven you. How has God forgiven you, forgiven me? That's the way we're to forgive others. Another reason why we tend not to forget, particularly if we're the one that's involved, we allow pain to drive us to be vindictive. When somebody sins against us, particularly, or somebody else, that pain can be very deep. And if we're not careful, it can drive us to be vindictive. Take matters into our own hands. We are allowing anger in that case to turn to bitterness. And when bitterness takes over, then we become a part of the problem ourselves. And remember something. Forgiveness is an act of the will. It begins with an act of the will. If we wait for a feeling to forgive, it may never come. Forgiveness is an act of the will, where we say, I forgive you. I don't feel like it, but I forgive you. And God honors that act of obedience. And thankfully, through the process of healing, eventually positive feelings will follow. But it's an act of the will. But the fact is, bottom line, God believes in new beginnings.